All right, guys, we are once again at the University of Washington. Today I have my hat. We are debating that family separation at the border is a good thing. I want to again thank you guys for the outpour of support. And if you want other ways to support me, I have added links in the bio to my PayPal, my Cashapp, and my Patreon. We just got memberships as well here on YouTube. So yeah, guys, let's get into it. All right, that pad there is for you to take notes if I say something and you think you're going to forget it or whatever like that. And if you want a hand warmer here, I'm sure your hands will get cold. I got two of them. Of course. Cam, Higby.
Nice to meet you.
Finn?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Obviously, the topic is that I believe family separation at the border is a good thing. And it seems like you probably disagree with that.
I do, yeah.
Okay. Why do you disagree?
Well, first I'd actually like you to give your reasons why you think that family separation at the border is a good thing so that I can have a little bit of basis to go off of.
Sure. So I think when you eliminate family separation, you're going to end up with either of two outcomes. Either you're going to have to put kids in cages. They're going to be in the detainment facilities with their parents because that's where people who violate 8 U.S. Code 1325, improper entry by alien, go. Or you're going to end up with a situation where there is no enforcement of that law for people who come here with families. And I think that can incentivize child trafficking. And I think that it also, the logic kind of breaks in a lot of situations.
I've been listening to you for a couple of minutes now, and I think you've made some understandable. Maybe I don't agree with them, but you've made some understandable points about why family separation might be a possible solution. But I just think that the concerns with the ethical and human rights violations that come with separating children from their family is a little bit too great. And I'm sure that when you're making this argument, you've considered that. I mean, you seem like a smart guy. I mean, I would imagine that you see that and go, this is a bad thing that we're separating children from their families. We don't want to do that, and that you've accounted for that in your argument. But I think it really severely outweighs it, and I think that there's some solutions to this problem that would really be better than just separating children from their families, because that's a pretty blatant violation of ethical rights.
Yeah, sure. So the reason that this happens now is because during Obama's administration, there were kids being put in the detainment facilities, and you heard kids in cages. Trump came into office, they blamed him for it. So he said, all right, we'll put the kids in shelters with the Department of Health and Human Services, and the parents will go to their normal detainment facilities, which is why I say that in order to end family separation, I think you're going to end up with one of two things: kids in cages or non-enforcement of the law. So if not one of those two things, what do you think the ethical solution for resolving the family separation problem would be? Because I think you're going to end up with one of those two problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's slightly misleading because it's not as if when Trump came into office, the situation for those children and those parents was probably as good as you're making it sound. I mean, it's not like the situation improved; it actually deteriorated in terms of conditions for the children. And Trump was actually the one who, in his first term in 2017, he instituted a no-tolerance policy for illegal immigration that gave the Department of Justice full reign to separate children from their families. And I understand that was intended as a deterrent, right? That makes sense. I mean, families, if you are on the side of I don't want illegal immigration, I think that this is going to cause a lot of problems, which is an understandable point of view. You might see that as a good deterrent. People will see this and they won't want to come anymore. And I get that. Part of the problem is that that's not actually what happened. It wasn't a deterrent. You asked me what would be like a better, more ethical solution. And I think one thing that should be put back into place that we had in place before is family care management programs, which was something that had been instituted by the Obama administration towards the end. And then it was immediately redacted by President Trump in his first term. And this is where undocumented immigrants would try to come across the border, and rather than separation or immediately sending them back, we would have caseworkers take care of their families, and we would keep them in containment, but in real communities, not in asylum, not in these camps, right? We keep them in real communities and have caseworkers work them through the whole legal process until they can legally immigrate, which is what we want, right? And this was something that was working really well. It had a 99% cooperation rate, and it allowed these people who are trying to get away from a bad situation in their home country to come into a much better situation in America. And I think that's something that should have been reinstituted, and I think that was a bad move to cancel that program.
Yeah, this is where I think we run into a major problem, where you said family care management programs, the caseworkers would take care of the families and they'd move into like real communities rather than detainment facilities or HHS shelters. And I think the problem with that is you run into an issue where now if you illegally immigrate to this country, you blatantly disrespect and disregard the laws of this country, but just because you have a kid, you're now treated better than American citizens. I don't get to live in a community for free. I have to pay rent, and I have to pay my bills, and I have to make sure my water's on, and I don't use too much water. I'm going to pay more money. But if you illegally immigrate to this country, blatantly disregard and disrespect the laws of this country, you just get like a free lifestyle. It doesn't make any sense. Now you're prioritizing illegal immigrants in this country over American citizens just because they have a kid. And that's where the blatant non-enforcement of the law comes into place. And I think that you need mitigated immigration measures. You can't just allow anyone to come anywhere. And the other thing is, like you said, that it doesn't work as a deterrent. And I don't think there's really going to be a way to calculate whether something counts as or works as a deterrent or whatever. But what did happen is you talked about 2017 through 2018, and immigration works every year in sort of like this. So you have a real high, and then you have a dip, and then you have a high. That's because there's, it's colder in the fall and it's hotter in the summer. People don't want to come when it's hot because they die, right? So the dips during like Biden or Obama's years were literally higher than the peaks in Trump's years. So I think this, like, with the exception of like 2019, there was a spike where it got almost to normal. But for the majority of his administration, illegal immigration and illegal border crossings, if you look at the Department of Customs and Border Patrol, was very, very low. And you could probably attribute it to a lot of different things. Like these things are very fluid. Even just saying you're going to crack down on the border is probably enough to de-incentivize people from coming here. But another thing is, like, if you have no family separation, another thing, and you give family units preferential treatment like we have under the Biden administration, you run into another problem where you're now also incentivizing the cartel to smuggle illegal immigrant children up to the United States. And I've spoken to border officials at the border, sheriff's deputies, and they've told me, we've seen the same girl come up here time after time after time again because the cartel smuggles them up. They get caught as a family unit, they get released, they get that preferential treatment, and then the girl gets smuggled back down to Mexico and comes back up. She thinks she's going to find her mom in America. She's not. She's being used as a pawn of the cartel so that they can scalp money off of illegal immigrants who want to come here. And it's really sad, and it's really devastating, and it happens every day. And programs like this only incentivize that from happening. They probably wouldn't happen at all if we didn't have preferential treatment for family units. So that's what I would say.
I think first of all, you're probably overstating, the quality of the communities that people would be living in under family care management programs. I mean, if you're comparing it to your life, I promise that your life, despite the fact that you have to manage the amount of water and electricity and pay rent, I think it's undeniable that you are living a significantly better life than someone who's living in a border community that is probably, with the funding and with the politics in America, just above the level of what we currently have. So I don't think that necessarily that these communities are going to be a high quality of life, but it is a safe place until we can allow someone to legally immigrate into the country. I don't know enough about cartel statistics to try and debate you that people are going to use children for human trafficking to try and get that preferential treatment to get into the United States. So, I mean, I believe you that you have some sort of valid statistic there. I would imagine that the majority are just families that are trying to get their children to a better life. But I do believe you that does happen. I don't have
a problem. Structure.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. I don't have any statistics off the top of my head that I could use to argue that. So I'll take your word for that. Sorry, it's freezing. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think our biggest difference comes with the value of this like humanitarian, ethical issue. I significantly value that. I think that's a huge issue, and I think the United States is a country that has valued itself as something that is accepting and willing to respond to the concerns of everyone, not just our own people, but also of other countries. And I think that anyone who is pushed to trying to immigrate illegally undocumented into another country out of their home is probably something that is probably someone that deserves help. It's definitely someone that deserves help, and I think it's our responsibility as a nation to do everything we can to help these people. And I think that separating children from their families just kind of fundamentally violates that. And I get your concerns, but there does need to be another solution. I don't think this is the way. I don't think it works strongly enough as a deterrent. I know you talked about that, but the no tolerance policy lasted for a full year and a half, and it encompassed which means it encompassed all of the seasons that you talked about, like, less people want to immigrate, and it was the winter.
Yeah, no, in the summer.
In the summer, yeah. Less people want to immigrate in the summer. So the full year and a half encompasses all of the seasons. A couple of them.
I don't think Trump repealed it himself. I think it was struck down by the courts.
Yeah, I think it was in 2018. It was struck down, but I think that shows really that it didn't work as a deterrent from the previous year when it wasn't in place.
They didn't strike it down because it wasn't an effective deterrent. They struck it down because they didn't like it. Like, it was a political thing, not probably for the same reasons you would like to strike it down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that's wrong, but I do think that the data shows that your argument for keeping it is a little bit less valid than maybe you say it is.
Okay, well, here's what I would say is, like, as far as overstating the quality of the communities that people are living in, I don't think it really matters if I'm overstating the quality or not. The fact of the matter is that there are people in this country who are homeless, and if you get any sort of subsidized house for free after blatantly disrespecting and disregarding the laws of this country and violating them, it doesn't make any sense to me, because you are getting preferential treatment over U.S. citizens, people who are born here. And also, I don't think that I'm really overstating, like, what these communities are probably like, because over the past 4 years, we cleared out hotels in New York City to house illegal immigrants, family units, disgusting, like nice hotels that are nicer than the ones that I would stay in on a business trip, which I think is disgusting. All over the country we did that. And on top of that, you talked about the humanitarian issue and that we need to have concern for everyone, not just our own people. And I completely disagree with you. I think that, sure, we can have some degree of concern for people everywhere else in the world. Of course, we fund the entire world. We give money to everyone. We're always handing out like millions and billions of dollars in our foreign aid budget, and that's great. We also let a lot of immigrants in from all over the world. But the fact of the matter is that the United States government, their priority needs to be on their own people. You can't spend all of your money and resources on every other country and every other body of people across the world, when your sole function and purpose is to serve the people of your country. That is the dedicated purpose of the United States government, is to serve American citizens. In the same way that everyone else's government around the world, regardless of what country you belong to, their purpose is also to dedicate themselves and serve the people of their country, right? So we can't be concerned with doing the jobs of other countries. Be like, imagine you worked at a company, let's say it's Apple or something, and you're in the, the App Store department, and somebody else is in the website department, right? You're not going to be trying to do the job, the actual physical job of everyone else on the website department. You're going to be focusing on the App Store because that's your job, right? So yeah, and I agree. Like, it's fine. You can say people deserve help, but they don't deserve the help. They don't deserve to be helped at the detriment of American citizens by our government, when the purpose of our government is to help us, not other people. And if there is an opportunity to help other people and help the United States, the people of the United States citizens at the same time, then I support that. But not if it's at our detriment.
Yeah, I think what you said at the end there is probably, more what I agree with. I just don't think that helping American citizens and helping non-American citizens are as mutually exclusive as you're kind of making it out to be. I agree that we should prioritize. Like, for example, homeless American citizens. That's a huge problem, especially here in Seattle. I mean, we have a ton of issues with that. We have a lot of people who are struggling, of every age, veterans, and they deserve help. But I don't think that that means that we just have to entirely ignore the problem at the border to the point where we are separating children from their families. And if we are separating children from their families, it's not like when we were in 2017 to 2018, it's not like for example, the homeless crisis improved dramatically during that time. It's not like as a result of that we said, okay, we're going to completely ignore the problem at the border by doing a no-tolerance policy. It's not like we said that, and in turn, we focused on American citizens. That's
I think we did. I think we actually did focus a lot on American citizens between 2017 and even 2021, while Trump was president. We had one of the strongest economies our country's ever seen during that period of time. And I'm not going to say that it's like all attributed to the fact that we slammed down on the border, but we were able to focus on American citizens. And on top of that, you said that you don't think helping non-Americans and Americans are like as mutually exclusive as I'm making it out to be. But the fact of the matter is that illegal immigrants, according to the House Committee on Budget, are a net drain, a net fiscal drain on the U.S. economy. They take more than they put into it. And on top of that, they've already shown blatant disregard and disrespect for the laws of this country. So they are detrimenting the United States. And I think that if you've already shown through your first action coming to this country that you are willing to effectively spit on U.S. code, I think that makes you far more likely to commit more crimes in the future. And I think that's not good. And if you look at places like Kinney County, Texas, counties that are actually affected by the border issue, there are more crimes committed by non-citizens in Kinney County, Texas, than there are people living in the county, according to the Texas Department of Public Safety. In El Paso, it's about 50% of crimes committed by illegal immigrants. It is devastating those communities. It also destroys business owners. They rob businesses. I interviewed a 76-year-old woman who got raped and robbed in her own home, tied up to her bed, and raped by illegal immigrants who snuck in through her window and then robbed her blind. It is a bad situation, and it particularly affects those communities, but at large also is a net drain to the entire country.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and a lot of those instances are real, and they do occur, and they are a huge problem. However, I think you're slightly cherry picking, specific cities and specific instances.
They have the highest populations of illegal immigrants.
No, I understand, but there are many border cities where crime rates are significantly lower for undocumented immigrants than anyone else. For example, like San Diego is a pretty prominent border city, and it really has a very low crime rate for undocumented immigrants. I mean, like
How do you find that data though? Because Texas is the only state in the country that sorts their data based on immigration status. So you'd never be able to find data in San Diego about how many crimes are committed by illegal immigrants because they don't sort it. Texas is the only state in the entire country, the only jurisdiction in the entire country that sorts their data based on immigration status. Nobody else does it. So if you look at any study done about crime in illegal immigrants versus natural-born citizens, all of those studies will be done in Texas, every single one of them, because San Diego doesn't sort it, so you'd never know. The crime rate in general might be lower, but I don't think that speaks to like any kind of illegal immigration problem, because crime rate's lower, but all the crimes are committed by illegal immigrants. Then it's like, well, obviously, it doesn't really matter if the crime rate's lower; the problem still exists. And I'm not saying that's the case, but it could be.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I don't have statistics on hand to try and dispute you on Texas versus non-Texas undocumented immigrant danger. But I do appreciate the fact, and I do imagine that you're correct in saying that there's, especially in the most prominent border cities, a little bit of a higher crime rate. I think that's very unrepresentative of the large majority of people who are trying to immigrate into the country. And while those are instances that do need to be solved, I think that's to categorize everyone by using those specific instances is a little bit disrespectful to many people who are coming into this country, not to try and spit on our laws and codes, like you said, but to try and seek safety, really. And honestly, I don't see undocumented immigrants as much of a detriment to our nation as you think. I mean, obviously, the crimes are a slight problem. I would imagine that the percentage of crimes committed by undocumented immigrants, especially not in border cities, is really not as dramatic as you think. And I think that, especially in non-border cities, it'll be significantly lower than anyone else. Well, no, even by percentage, percentage of population versus crimes committed. If you're an undocumented immigrant, you're probably not going to want to commit a crime, because if you are caught, the consequences are significantly more severe.
Every day at present, and I think I don't think that I don't think, at least in the past 4 years, I don't think that the consequences are more severe at all. Actually, I think usually what happens, they get caught and released every time. Commit a crime, they get released in less than 100 days every time. There's been so many murders and DUIs where somebody's been sent to jail for assault, and then they go and kill Laken Riley, for example, who was murdered by an illegal immigrant on Augusta's campus, or they get into a DUI after being released for assault. It's insane.
Right. But I think, again, instead of, like, using some sort of statistic that would indicate that, which you've specifically said we don't have that data, you're using...
Or any other state other than Texas. We
Right.
do have the data in Texas.
Right, but you're using, like, very extreme instances to try and categorize everyone as dangerous. And I don't...
I'm not categorizing everyone as dangerous.
I don't think that's correct.
I don't think I'm categorizing everyone as dangerous, and I acknowledge that all illegal immigrants are not dangerous, they're not bad people or whatever. But what I will say is, you said earlier, they're not necessarily coming in this country to disrespect our laws or to do whatever. They're just coming here for a better life or for safety or whatever, right? So if we're neighbors, and you heard me talking to my friend, we were both taking our garbage out, and my friend just got to my house, and I said, all right, just go inside, put your shoes in the mat, and bathrooms on the left if you need it, whatever, right? So then you smell me cooking some apple pie that night, and the next day you say, well, me and Cam are close enough friends, we're friendly, we talk at the garbage cans every now and then in the alley, and I think I'm just going to go grab a slice of that pie you was cooking up last night. While you're inside my house, a storm breaks out. When you enter my house, you track mud through my house, you don't take your shoes off, and then you take a poop on my counter instead of using the bathroom on the left, right? You've now blatantly disrespected the rules of my house. You've blatantly disrespected me by pooping on my counter, and then you decide you're going to do the dishes. Because you're such a nice guy. You made the pie, you ate your pie and stuff, and you did my dishes. And because you're a hardworking American in my house, right?
Sure.
I don't care that you did my dishes. I don't care that you weren't safe outside because there was a storm. I care that you came into my house seeking your own personal gain. You tracked mud through my house. You destroyed my carpet. And then you took a poop on my counter. That's violation of 8 U.S. Code 1325. The mud and poop are analogous to the law that you've disrespected. And I don't care. I never want you in my house again. It doesn't matter their intentions. It matters what they've done. When you enter a situation where you're giving illegal immigrants preferential treatment over American citizens, when the government's sole job is to care for and be responsible for American citizens, you run into a real problem, right? Because if I get a DUI and I have a child, my child gets separated from me. I go to jail. My child either stays home with my wife, or if my wife's dead, goes to a shelter, just like the children of illegal immigrants.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should touch on that later. I don't think those are necessarily the same case, but I would say that the reason we have to keep these, like, decide if we're analyzing on a basis of, like, it's good because it's effective, is because, like, if your argument is that, like, a law, like, governments do something not because it's morally good, but because it creates the best utility for the most people, that is a moral framework in which people analyze stuff. And so, like, but for an example, like, the effectiveness of a law is I mean, I guess this is not an example, but the effectiveness of a law is specifically, like, I could create a law that says, like, I'm going to fine you $100 if I catch you chewing bubble gum or something. Or actually, I could say I'm going to fine you $100 if I catch you chewing bubble gum. And probably that's a really effective law. And so
You can enforce it well, yeah.
Yeah, you can enforce it well.
But there's not a purpose for it. It's arbitrary, right? So, like, I don't think that immigration laws are arbitrary. I think you need them.
That's not my point. I'm just saying, like, it feels really important to separate if something's good based on effectiveness versus good.
I'm not saying it's good because it's, like, easy to prosecute or that you can effectively legislate it. What I'm saying is it's good because the government's responsibility is to take care of American citizens, and their obligation is to us, not the citizens of other country. But what I would ask you is, like, so if not family separation, if we don't separate families, send the kids to HHS shelters and send the parents to detainment facilities, what is the other option? Because to me it seems only you'd have to either send the kids to the detainment facilities, effectively jails, or not prosecute at all and drop immigration laws and not have any.
I'm not an expert on immigration. I don't think either of us would have a solution sitting here, but I guess I just want to make sure that we understand that the point that you're making here is that it's good not because it's effective. You're specifically saying it's not about how effective, how good, how easy it is to prosecute them for it. It's because, specifically, you're saying it's good because it protects American citizens. That's a good thing. Like,
there are many reasons. It protects American citizens. It makes sure that people who blatantly disregard and disrespect the laws of this country as their first action entering it don't get preferential treatment over American citizens.
Those are moral reasons, not that it's effective at deterring people.
Well, I think it's pragmatics and it's morals. I think this creates the best outcomes for everyone because kids don't have to get put in jails, and it also creates or prevents consequence to the American people when
Okay.
the government's job is to prevent consequence to the American people.
Okay,
Their duty is to us.
that sounds like a moral argument. I'm gonna engage with the moral aspect of that then.
Sure.
I think on the face of it, it does seem like the two options are either we imprison kids in the same prisons that their adults are, or we don't prosecute people. But I don't think that just because those are the two options that appear the easiest, that those are the only two options. I'm sure that experts in the field, and perhaps you consider yourself an expert, would probably have different solutions that I don't have as a person who doesn't study immigration law on a college campus, or like immigration policy would have. It's very easy to suggest that, look, these are the only two options. It's black or white. Either we imprison the kids with their parents, or we don't prosecute.
This is a debate that's happened for a long time, and I don't see any other option other than that. I've heard people say things like, well, why don't we put people who have children in better communities and not put them in detainment facilities? And it's like, again, I don't get a free house. I'm an American citizen. But why does somebody who broke the laws of this country to come here get a free house automatically because they have a kid? And then again, that further incentivizes the cartels to ship kids up that do not belong to the parents. They get in with the perceived, their perception that they're a family unit. Ship the kid back down, smuggle with more people. Just encourages human smuggling too.
Yeah, it sounds to me like the big part of this is it doesn't feel fair to have American citizens who commit crimes get separated from their kids.
I think it's perfectly fair that they get separated.
Well, okay, so what I was saying is I don't think it seems what it sounds is like it doesn't feel fair to separate to punish American citizens in such a way and not punish the illegal immigrants.
Well, it's not even a punishment. It's like if you commit a crime and you're a citizen, you go to jail, and you would never punish your kid for that crime. Like if I commit a DUI, my kid doesn't go to jail for a DUI. We'd never put my kid in prison. The kid would go to a shelter or would stay with his mom if it had one, and if its mom was dead, it'd go to a shelter. Other family members. That's exactly what happens with family separation. So like, if you have an aunt or uncle who's a primary or a permanent resident or a citizen of the United States, instead of sending the kid to a shelter, we send them to like go live with that family member instead. If there's an option there, but oftentimes there isn't.
I don't have a lot of experience with the welfare system for kids in the U.S., but my understanding is that the quality of shelters in which your potential child would be sent if you committed a DUI is much higher than the shelters available at the border. And
They don't get sent to shelters at the border.
Yeah,
they get
sent to detainment centers.
No. I mean for the kids.
Yeah.
The kids don't go to like immigration camps. They get sent to shelters in the Department of Health and Human Services. So it's generally going to be the same shelters.
I think there was like
They're
a 3-week
special
waiting period in which they were kept in like pretty unfortunate conditions.
Well, would that be better than keeping them in unfortunate conditions the whole time?
I think it depends, but I don't think that keeping them in the unfortunate conditions is a requirement at all.
Well,
I think you could, like the U.S. government has so much money, so many resources.
But that's what I'm advocating for, is sending them to the shelters and the parents to the detainment facilities.
So just sending them. So you're advocating for,
the kid either goes with a family member or they go with
immediately to a.
Yeah, and that's what Trump supports too, and that's what he changed about immigration law.
Okay.
Obviously, he couldn't snap his fingers and make it happen overnight, but.
Yeah. I still think that the analogy between you getting a DUI and your child getting separated is different, and
I do too, but for probably different reasons than you think it's different.
I would say, and my main reason is not that the framework of the situation is all that different. You can simplify it down to someone broke a law, they don't get to be with their kid, but generally, when you're crossing the border, the stakes are a lot higher than when you're drunk driving. When you commit a crime in the U.S. as a U.S. citizen, generally, it doesn't feel like it doesn't. It's not that it doesn't feel. Generally, when you commit a crime in the U.S., it's you're not breaking that law because your life is in danger. There's some exceptions for I'd say people who are stealing stuff.
Yeah, what if I was poor and I was stealing stuff to get by? I should still go to jail, right? I'm still violating somebody's rights by stealing their property, and I still get separated from my kid. Like we can't just stop because really what this would end up doing is justifying not having laws at all, because now all of a sudden
I don't think that's true.
Well, if you don't separate illegal immigrants from their families when they commit crimes, then it's like, okay, well, all of a sudden, what's the point of doing that for American citizens? Illegal immigrants get preferential treatment. Oh, okay, well, maybe we don't separate American citizens either. It doesn't make any sense.
The context in which you are breaking a law, totally. I mean, it absolutely matters in what your punishment should be.
Well, it's not now. You know that we're punishing illegal immigrants, though. It's they've committed a crime. That crime exists because it creates a problem for the United States, and you have to deport them, and you have to process them to deport them. So you hold them in facilities. You're not going to put them in 5-star hotels.
No, I mean, and that's a completely other thing. But the point is, like, if you commit a crime in the U.S., the punishment is the jail time. If we want to use that as an analogous case, we should probably consider the deportation, the confinement of the legal immigrants as a similar, it is. I mean, the thing is, like, it's not necessarily that, like, maybe we're using the wrong definitions of punishment here, but in terms of, like, what's the structure of the law is, look, like, if you illegally cross our border, the punishment you're getting is we're deporting you. That is the punishment of the law. That's the sanction of the law, is that, like, we're going to deport you. Part of that is going to be some form of confinement until we deport you back to the country.
The process and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, but, like, I don't think that, like, confinement cannot be considered a form of punishment. Sure. I mean, we could go into the semantics.
Well, I think it breaks down too, is like you've illegally broken into this country, you violated our laws. We're not going to give you the best we have after you've blatantly disregarded and disrespected the laws. We're not going to shack you up in a 5-star hotel. We're probably going to give you what is minimal to keep you alive, which I think we should also do to American prisoners. You get the minimal to keep you alive, and that's what you get. And your kids probably shouldn't be in that situation because they're not moral actors and they didn't choose to break the law. You, unfortunately, forced them to come with you, so they get put in shelters until you can all be deported at once.
Yeah, okay, so, I mean, I hear where you're coming from. I think, like, it's understandable to feel like we need to deter this, and that we should put, I mean, I probably have a different stance on, like, what level of, like, habitation prisoners should get, people who are being detained should get, but I think, like,
because you put them in a 5-star hotel, and they're gonna want to come here. So the better the quality of detainment is.
No detainment is putting people in a 5-star hotel. There's no point in bringing that up.
There are people, actually,
I mean,
not true.
Rich people who get taxed.
Illegal immigrants were put in very nice hotels in New York City, Chicago, all over the country for the past 4 years. They cleared the hotels out and blocked them up for illegal immigrants. That literally happened all over the country. It happened. I don't know that they were necessarily 5-star hotels, but they were very nice hotels. So I think some of them might have been 5-star. I can't remember. I'll have to look at the reports. But anyway, institutionalization happens all the time. The nicer you make the detainment facilities, whether it's a jail, a prison, or a detainment facility for illegal immigrants, the more likely people are going to want to go there because they don't have enough money to sustain themselves outside of prison. So there are, have you ever seen Shawshank Redemption?
I have.
You know how the guy kills himself at the end? He, like, hangs himself because he got out of prison, because he can't survive outside of prison by himself because the prison provides everything for him. That happens all the time. I know.
We should not argue about
I swear it is.
No.
But there are tons of people who get out of jail and they go and commit more crimes to get back into jail, and that's why the recidivism rate is so high, because they're institutionalized and can't survive without jail. That happens every day, and it's very high in the United States.
I hesitate to say it's because they want to go back to jail. I think
they don't know how to survive on their own.
They don't know how to survive in a world
because the prison provides everything for them. So if you make it appealing to be in prison or to be in a detainment facility, you incentivize it.
No, I don't think that it's that the prison provides everything. I think that
it does provide housing, food, water, everything.
When you're a felon, I have 20%. I am going to stop when my phone dies because I don't want to.
Yeah, you're good.
I don't think that it's that people can't, like, it's that it provides the food, housing, water, like. I think primarily it's really, really difficult to get a job as a felon, or a job that provides enough money to have to provide for your living, for your food, and so it's not necessarily that people, like, want to go back to jail. you're welcome to assert that. I'm going to assert that it's probably not that people desire jail. It's more likely that the system is really hard to break out of. It's very, very difficult as a felon to get a job, as someone with a criminal record to get a job.
Would
If
it
you
also
don't
be
have the
hard to get a
resources-
job as an illegal immigrant? Which would also
Potentially-
incentivize going to a facility, right? You run into the same
It
problem.
may be difficult to find a job as an illegal immigrant, but I mean, a lot of our agricultural industry is based off of the hard work of illegal immigrants who work for incredibly low wages that American citizens don't want to work for.
But that's not why American citizens don't want to do it, though. It's not because American citizens don't not take those jobs because like illegal immigrants just want them so much more. It's because you can hire 100 illegal immigrants for the same price as one American citizen, and American citizens can't compete with that.
It's because the wage being offered is something that American citizens will not accept.
And it's an illegal wage, and that's the problem. Is like you can't compete with somebody who you can hire them for $1 an hour when the law requires that you pay an American citizen $15 an hour. And you run into this issue where the only reason you'd hire an illegal immigrant is so you can pay them less, because it's illegal to hire illegal immigrants. You can go to jail for it. So the only reason you take that risk is you can get way more labor for way less.
Yeah.
So it's impossible for American citizens to compete with people who are willing, or compete in fields where the owners are willing to hire illegal immigrants. It's just impossible. Don't touch me.
I think we've gotten a little off topic. I don't think that's the root of the reason that like American citizens don't go work day labor in a farm.
Do you know that guy?
No, I've got no idea. But
Come up and touch me.
you are on UW, so
Yeah.
I want to get back to the claim that you made earlier that was it creates the best, the most good or like utility for the most people. And I want to challenge I think what I think that claim misses potentially is that creating the most amount of good for the most people, for the most people could, it's a moral framework which I think like lacks some nuance. And
that's not my moral framework, but
Okay.
I'm not a utilitarian. I believe in the NAP, non-aggression principle, and that's why I don't really view this as a moral issue, because it doesn't deal with the non-aggression principle really.
Okay, I think then maybe we're not able to communicate on the moral grounds.
No,
but
that's
I would,
fine. I would just view it
say
as pragmatics.
Oh yeah. So but I mean, in terms of like, I'll say my part on whether I think it's like good. In terms of like a moral framework, I think. My own opinion is probably that, yes, the U.S. government has an interest in protecting the good interest of its citizens. It
Primary
has,
function, right?
Yeah. So the primary function of a government is to protect the interests of its citizens. Generally, I think so. Enforcing. So I guess the assumption then is like, not enforcing this, like not having, or prosecuting illegal immigrants does that in some function, right? Like, prosecuting illegal immigrants somehow there's some way in which that protects the interests of American citizens. And I will grant that I think there are some philosophers and such that think that like completely open borders is the correct moral thing to do. I'm not of that belief. I don't think that necessarily completely open borders like protects the interest of American citizens. I think there is some level at which restricting the amount of people who can come into a country is important, but I don't see. So I think, first of all, the economic benefits of having I don't want to go so far as say like I really support the exploitation of illegal immigrants, but I think that the claim that prosecuting illegal immigrants and deporting them protects the interests of American citizens is not quite nuanced enough, because just on the surface, that's not taking into account potential economic benefits provided by having illegal immigrants in the workforce. You're looking at like potentially higher food costs. You do have less labor, specifically because illegal immigrants are generally not doing more than like labor. Like they're not really working in jobs in the private, like, you know, in companies, you know, not in the same way that like an American citizen with a college degree is going to work in, you know, the potential for my job market is basically everything in the U.S. that I'm qualified for. I'm qualified for hard labor. I'm qualified for, I mean, I'm a philosophy student here. I'm qualified for some things. I'm qualified to work in retail sales. That's what I do now.
But I would disagree that there's like any kind of major economic benefit of having illegal immigrants here. So if you look at the House Committee on Budget's report on the fiscal gain of illegal immigrants, they're a net drain on the U.S. economy. They take more than they give to the U.S. economy. On top of that, you also run into issues like we talked about earlier with competition between jobs. Obviously, you're always going to be at a disadvantage as an American citizen looking to get into blue-collar labor if the employer is able to hire 1,000 illegal immigrants for the price of 7 American citizens. Obviously, I'm exaggerating a little bit. And then you also run into situations where like surplus jobs, right? So if you have 500,000 let's say computer science jobs, and obviously usually we're looking at lower skilled labor, but just because computer science is just a really easy field, let's say you have 1 million available computer science jobs. Okay, you have 1.5 million American citizens that are skilled in computer science and qualify for that job. You're obviously not going to want to bring in more immigrants that have computer science degrees. But if you have 500,000 Americans who are qualified for that job and 1 million available jobs, maybe it's a good idea to bring in some people to fill that field. But you're not going to want to bring in immigrants with those skills when you already have a surplus of people looking for those jobs, because then you screw over the immigrant and the American citizen. And if they come here illegally, you're only screwing over the American citizen because they can't compete with the illegal immigrant.
Well, I think that argument may have some good points. I don't think that, I think part of the problem I have with that argument is that it assumes that people are only, I mean, like, I want to work, like, okay, consider a computer scientist, they want to work as a computer scientist. First of all, like, just off the bat, obviously, illegal immigrants are not going to work as computer scientists.
Yeah, I was just using that as an example.
I know it's an example. You don't want to invite more people in who have qualifications for a specific
Let's say like
job.
carpentry or something like that.
But yeah, give carpentry.
Same example.
Yeah, let's say we have 1.5 million Americans who want to work in carpentry job, and for some reason we have
only 500,000.
Only 500,000 carpentry jobs. I guess, you know, I'll admit, like, generally you probably don't want to bring in a workforce that oversaturates the job market, but also specifically, like, yes, as a theory, I could agree with that, but I don't think that, I really don't think that that's actually, like, a case that we need to worry about. I'm still going to maintain that I don't think Americans want to work hard labor in a field. I'm sure there is a portion of the population who believe that like,
we have millions of Americans that turn 18 every single year, and about 5 million with high school diplomas and about 5 million without. And those are people that are looking to go into low, mid, and high skilled labor, respectively. And there are tons of people that I think would work those jobs and currently do work those jobs in places where illegal immigrants don't steal them from them, and would be much more able to if that wasn't happening. You know what I'm saying? Let's say you own a farm and you hire 100 illegal immigrants, you pay them way less than you're supposed to, right? If they report you for paying them next to nothing, it's mutually assured destruction. You both go to jail, right? But if you as a farm owner pay me, an American citizen, less than what I'm supposed to be getting paid, you pay me under the table, I can report you and I did nothing wrong. I don't go to jail. But like in the other case, it's mutually assured destruction.
It's definitely there's mutually assured destruction.
So it's impossible to compete with. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's why Americans don't want to work those jobs, is because you'd have to like sell yourself out to do it basically and screw yourself over and get paid nothing.
I wanted to bring up again the idea that like prosecuting illegal immigrants is protecting the interests of and I know how we got distracted because we started talking about jobs as like an interest of Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about the
Also safety aspects
the
too.
potential economic, and well,
because if you don't enforce the border in general, then like anyone could come over, even if they're members of the cartel or looking to do you harm. They're foreign entities, spies, soldiers, whatever. Anyone. If you just stop enforcing border law, then literally anyone could come, and you could have a slew of a million different like security problems that arise from it as well. And if you don't enforce it against everyone, you can't enforce it against anyone. So you'd effectively need to enforce it against everyone in order to avoid those problems. Because if you're not catching the people at the border, obviously if you're catching them, you're enforcing the law. If you're not catching them, you can't vet them. And if you can't vet them, you don't know if they're a member of the cartel, a spy. You don't know if they're like a foreign soldier or somebody, a terrorist coming to like suicide bomb a bus. You have no idea. Like, so all of those security problems like play into it, which is just outside of the economic is another reason why we have border laws, and every country in the world has border laws.
There is a potential for increased cartel activity.
They'd run wild. Cartels would run wild.
So, but continuing on with my point about protecting the interests of Americans, I do think that is part of the job of the U.S. government. But I'm going to step back from saying that like. So in terms of this is a good law morally, I want to suggest that the distress felt by the people who are not part of the cartel, the families, 'cause I think the majority of people immigrating are their families, they're people looking for a better life, trying to escape political persecution, gang violence, sexual assault, murder. Those people, I tend to feel that that the good that we could provide them, the good that can be found in America, probably outweighs the potential negatives that they're bringing. And again, I'm not super into the moral framework of utilitarianism, provide the most good, prevent the most bad. But I will say in this instance, I really do think one, that the good that those people, the good that is provided to those people by being able to find a better life in America probably outweighs the negative impacts that people like us feel, that American citizens feel. And I also think that the family separation policy causes really a very large amount of emotional distress to both the kids. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that separating kids from their parents at a young age causes like pretty deep psychological issues. That experience is going to be really traumatic for the kids who are being separated and the parents who don't know where their kids are. I saw you earlier, and I did a brief little look up on Wikipedia, and not that Wikipedia is necessarily always the best source, but I saw a lot of stuff saying like parents didn't know where their kids were. Kids who as young as 12 months old were being separated from their parents, and I totally hear the like, well, look, we got to apply the law equally, and if people know that if they come up with kids, that they'll be treated preferentially. But I truly believe that even if that's true, the kids, I mean, those children are already making a really like hard journey, a really dangerous journey. A lot of people die trying to come up to the border. And so I'm not as concerned with, the potential loss of jobs. I'm not as concerned with, I'll be honest, I'm not as concerned with the drug activity as other people might be. My primary concern is like, as much as I'm not a utility maximizer or a utilitarian or anything, I'm like, let's minimize the amount of trauma that's happening to these kids. They can't tell their parents no. They're getting brought up. And if in doing so we have to apply the law slightly differently, we have to not detain these people in the same way that we might want to. If that leads to kids not being traumatized, if that leads to less overall trauma for parents and kids, that's something I'm willing to agree to, and I probably that speaks to the difference in maybe our priorities. But I would much rather we have. I mean, this is maybe going to be kind of contentious. I might get clip farmed here.
I'm not clip farmed.
I think most of the time I'd rather have kids who get to stay with their parents, and even if we say, look, there's some bad to illegal immigration, I'd rather have the kids not be separated from their parents, and the government get kind of screwed over and be like, well, we can't apply this rule to everyone. We can't apply. We can't have. We're applying this differently to illegal immigrants versus our criminal code to American citizens.
Yeah, so that's what I would say is like
I'd prefer the kids don't get traumatized.
But it's not based on so what you're basing it on is like trauma and psychological distress and stuff like that. But the same trauma and psychological distress happens when somebody gets a DUI. Let's say I don't have a wife. Let's say my wife's dead and I don't have any family. I have a child. I get a DUI. I go to jail. My kid has to go to a DHS, Department of Health and Human Services shelter. The same trauma happens there, but I obviously have to go to jail. I can't just skip out on my jail time when I got a DUI. I have to be punished and removed from society because clearly I'm not capable of operating within it. But that same trauma happens, and it doesn't matter whether that trauma happens.
The same trauma does happen.
We're talking about people being separated from their families, though. The child being separated.
So yes, there is a similar thing happening, but the difference in you getting a DUI, being separated from your hypothetical child, and what's the jail time on a DUI? Is like
I don't know.
Depends. I mean, it's
committed
probably
murder. Let's
okay.
Say I'm gonna be in jail for the rest of my life.
You're gonna be in jail for the rest of your life.
Yep.
I mean, actually, no. I think we should stick with the DUI because it is a completely different thing. I mean,
it's not about like the principal crime. It's about I'm going to jail. My kid's getting separated.
But the trauma is different depending on the crime you do. And so if we say look,
I don't know why. So the child doesn't understand the crime.
So I don't think the trauma to the child is going to be the same.
The trauma only comes from the separation, right? It doesn't come from the crime because the child doesn't understand the crime. The trauma comes from the child is being sent to a shelter, father's going to jail.
Okay, so it is trauma to the child. It's also when you go to jail for a hypothetical crime, you've broken American criminal code, you're a citizen, you go to jail for something, right? First of all, we're assuming it's you. You're a native English speaker. You understand what's happening. You understand. I went to jail. These people are good at communicating with you. You know your kid's going to Health and Human Services. You know that your child, you know what's happening. Not to minimize that illegal immigrants may know what's happening, but the likelihood that those people are good at speaking English, pretty low.
A lot of Border Patrol agents speak Spanish. A lot of them are actually Hispanic themselves. So I highly doubt that these people aren't being communicated to effectively. And regardless, the notion that they don't understand what's happening when they know they're breaking the law, immigrating into the country,
there are
because
a lot of reports
Mexico
where
they're
kids
probably full of shit. There's also a lot of reports of people being found in trunks and saying, I'm seeking asylum. They're not seeking asylum. They illegally smuggled themselves into the country and now they're claiming asylum, right? They understand what's happening. They understand the laws because Mexico, Argentina, Guatemala, all of them are no different than the United States. They all have border laws. This isn't rare. It's not a new thing for the United States. There are border laws everywhere.